Finally, hi friends, Danny here in the outdoor studio, and this is the first episode of our series of Tuesday MTB trainings episodes, along with Tom Bell, my new coach. Guys, it's been going great with the channel and with my training, and I decided to go even further and do some more advanced stuff. And so I've got a new coach. Doesn't matter in what shape you are, guys, just join us. Let us know how your training looks like and what would you like to learn from our episodes. On each of these episodes there will be some parts where you learn something, and there will be discussion between me and my coach on how I do, so you will know exactly how my training looks like and how do I perform. Over to you, Tom.
Hey everyone, this is Tom. I'm coming to you from a stereotypically wet UK day, even though it's supposed to be summer. But I thought I'd just quickly introduce myself and just say that I'm really excited to be working with Danny on this project where I'll be coaching him towards some of his high priority races this season, namely the National Championships in July. So yeah, I'll just briefly talk a little bit about me. I suppose it breaks down into two parts. Part one is that I'm an athlete, I'm a racer. I race cross-country mountain bike at World Cup level and some other UCI races throughout Europe and domestically in the UK. My palmarès includes being the 2017 British Mountain Bike Marathon National Champion, and I got the silver medal in the cross-country national championships last year, so certainly going for that title this year. And on the other side, I'm a coach, so that's what I'll be working with Danny on, and I've coached probably hundreds of athletes now over the years that I've been working directly with people, and in that time we've had national championship victories and plenty of national team appearances from the cyclists that I've worked with in international competition. I'm just going to get on with the ride now and I'll check back in later in the video, but just wanted to say again that I'm super excited to be working on this project. It should be a good one over the coming weeks and months. In this part of the video, I just wanted to explain a little bit more about what the training approach is going to be leading up to that key period in the season where the Mountain Bike National Championships will be happening in July, which will form the main A priority race of at least this part of the season. So when I first spoke to Danny about this project, he immediately said that he wanted to improve his FTP, and he kind of had a bit of an idea that it might have been lower than he thought it was. And that was kind of confirmed by the first workout, and the FTP set in Training Peaks, or our estimated FTP that we set in Training Peaks, was just obviously a little bit too high, meaning that the workout was just out of his reach. So the approach in the immediate future is going to be to reduce his FTP set in Training Peaks and then gradually build that back up with some focused training and structured training leading up to the race. So what we'll do is we'll use that time between now and the event date to firstly improve his things like FTP and VO2 max and his general aerobic efficiency, and then right at the end we'll try to combine adding some anaerobic work and some more race specific efforts with a taper, so reducing the overall training volume but slightly increasing the intensity of his training, again to reflect the demands of what he'll be experiencing in competition. How exactly we achieve that will be covered in the upcoming videos where we'll look at things on more of a workout by workout basis.
So Tom, you really made me suffer that Tuesday. And I have two questions. The first one, did I really fail the session, or can we still benefit a lot from what just happened? Can you say something about that?
Yeah, so we can definitely benefit from it. It obviously wasn't completely ideal, because if it was, then all of the intervals would have been hard but manageable, yeah. And we would have got through the session with with the intervals all looking relatively similar. So as I kind of discussed a little bit before this, it was really a case of we thought we had, you had an estimate of what your FTP was, so we plugged that into Training Peaks and we used a first session to kind of see how accurate that was. And then it turned out that it was the FTP itself, not your overall fitness, but the FTP was set obviously too high. So what I think we're going to do now is reduce it down and potentially do an FTP test at some point, just to recalibrate all those training zones and get an accurate picture of where you are now. And then we can go forward from there, and I'm sure that those sessions after that FTP test, or after we've got an FTP number that's correct, will go fine, and they'll look a lot more like they should have done in that first workout.
So Tom, can we say to the viewers that when you fail the session, you can still benefit, you can still learn from it, so you should not be depressed about that? Because I've noticed now, I know for sure, I've been doing either high intensity super short intervals or tempo rides intervals, which were well below my FTP threshold, not really working on the FTP. And those long MTB rides I was doing, they don't really increase the FTP, do they?
The long ones actually do. So they just do it in a slightly different way. So they improve more peripheral things with the fitness, and then the high intensity is more targeted. We'll do it quickly, but it's all the high intensity is kind of underpinned by the aerobic efficiency and the aerobic fitness that comes from long duration, low intensity rides.
Yeah. And then the second thing I'm really thinking a lot about now is, how is that possible that my FTP was in January 285 watts? The FTP was dropping. We have June now, right? So 6 months, 5 months.
Yeah.
But I've been doing all my personal best or personal records this year. How is that possible? So FTP goes down and my results go up.
Yeah. I mean, there's still a few things we might need to iron out in terms of making sure all of those numbers are completely correct and comparable. But in all honesty, FTP can tell you a little bit about your fitness, and unfortunately, a lot of people use it as an overall measure of their entire spectrum of fitness. And to be honest, it only shows a window into a one part of it. And it can't tell you what your broader fitness and performance looks like. So I would imagine that you've improved a lot in other areas. So you've maximised your anaerobic capacity potentially, and there's some other things at work that are potentially masking the slightly lower FTP. And if you do focus on other things, so if you focus on those high power efforts and your anaerobic work capacity, that does reduce your ability to produce power at lactate threshold. So you're producing more lactate across the board, which will effectively lower that FTP or the related lactate threshold. So there's multiple things at work, is what I'm trying to say, and it's just going to be, I think, with the training, a case of tweaking this and tweaking that, so that everything kind of works in tandem, maybe a little bit better. Because I know you spoke about in the race, noticing that you were really fast on the first few laps, and then you'd get progressively slower throughout the race. So
20 watts per lap goes down.
Exactly. So that would again suggest that potentially that lactate threshold area is maybe not quite as developed as it could be, and you're using that really good anaerobic power and neuromuscular stuff at the start of the race, but then it's just not there at the end. So a few little few little signs there that might indicate what's going on.
So Tom, there was a Tuesday, I really suffered, but then Wednesday you planned a recovery ride for me. So there was the recovery ride. No, there was 2 hours mountain bike ride.
Steady mountain bike, yeah.
Lovely. It was lovely. I did it fully fasted, as 90% of my trainings in the morning I do fully fasted. It was great. And then Thursday was supposed to be a recovery ride, but we did 5 hours mountain bike rides with about 20 kilometers of climbing. So it was actually a long, hard day. I was just doing some pre-ride of the new trails here in Poland, so I had to do it. And I was told that we will only be going down the hill, so I didn't take my e-bike. I was just on a trail bike, so it was actually a hard day. So I decided to make nothing yesterday.
Yeah.
And then the yesterday's training that you planned for me, I did today, and it was 3 times 12 30 seconds intervals with 15 seconds rest between the intervals, right?
Cool.
And those intervals were supposed to be in between 320 up to 360 watts, and
right.
I was crushing it today. I felt amazing. And I don't know why. I mean, I know I love these intervals. I didn't feel sore. I didn't feel tired. And when you see the power data, the power file on the Training Peaks, when the power goes down below the 320, it's only because I'm sometimes riding down the hill. Or the first set I did on the gravel road, and the 2 sets, the second and third, I did on the tarmac on my mountain bike.
Cool.
But I felt I could go on for like much more sets. Why is it so then? Why do I suffer on my FTP and I feel so great, so high?
Well, again, I think that probably gives even more support to what we were talking about before, in that your higher level fitness is pretty well developed, and you've got that good anaerobic capacity. I mean, I would think in these intervals, if that FTP is still a little bit too high, so those numbers that were the target, so I think they were 320 or in that range. I mean, they're probably set a little bit too high as it is. So if you were able to get through that session with the targets being maybe set a little bit too high, and then you crushed it and didn't have to worry about it at all, then that again would suggest that it's probably the aerobic endurance side that's not as developed, and the stuff kind of above lactate threshold is, you're really strong in that area. Whether you have a genetic predisposition to be strong in that area, or it's just a reflection of the training you've been doing and the racing, or a bit of both.
Yeah, the cross country,
Yeah. I mean, that is the fitness that you need for cross country, but if we can underpin that by improving the aerobic side of things, so that you can produce consistent lap times, and as we said, not lose 2.5 minutes from the first lap to the last lap. That's all time that goes into your final result, which, as we know, in cross country can make a massive difference. 2.5, 3 minutes can be the difference between just being inside the top 10 to being on the podium in the top 3. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
So the thing is, there's lots of good points that we're finding out, even straight away. But it's just we've got some other things to work on that can just improve things overall.
Yeah. So the FTP, we can say, is the basis on which we build everything else, right? And when I was focusing from January up to now to June with maybe higher intensity, I was actually losing a bit of that base, but it was okay. We'll focus now more on that, especially thinking about my race, planning the race, the Ironman.
Yeah. The quarter Ironman will be a really nice, essentially a hard training session for that aerobic fitness. And then, as I mentioned just before this part of the video, that obviously we don't have half a season to work on things before the national championship. So we'll do what we can to just bolster that aerobic side, and then we'll make the training essentially more race specific, and then taper down as well. So more race specific, which means a little bit more high intensity, but overall the training volume will come down so that you're nice and rested for that main race.
I'm looking forward what you're gonna plan for me. It is so exciting to open that app, Training Peaks, and see what Tom has put there.
Okay, so let's just talk briefly about functional threshold power, aka FTP. Now, generally speaking, your FTP is defined as your 1 hour maximum evenly paced power. And it's important to know as a power meter user, just because it's so broadly used, and you can leverage it to set training zones and measure progress with routine testing. It acts as a bit of a proxy out on the road or trail to your lactate threshold, in absence of having that tested and having a full lactate profile. As much as it's a good all-round measure of fitness progress and where you're currently at, it definitely does have some limitations and certainly doesn't tell you everything about where you're at fitness-wise. So with Danny next week, we'll be doing an FTP test and trying to establish some better training zones and just generally see where he's at with that measure. We'll talk a little bit more in the next video about the protocol that we decided to use to actually test that FTP.
Short comment about that. FTP, I'm gonna largely rely on my FTP during the quarter Ironman. It's gonna be the first one in my life, 6th of July this year. But at the end of July, when I'm gonna go for the nationals, cross-country nationals, FTP will still be crucial. Why is it so? Because I can be fast for 1 lap, but I need to be fast for 90 minutes or 5, 6, 7 laps or so. And FTP is great basis so that I can sustain my power output, like my normalized power for each lap should be at least similar. So we'll see how we do. Let us know, how do you like this episode? What would you like to learn in the next one? Because the next one will be about FTP protocols, but we will do some super basic stuff as well. Waiting for your comments down below, and see you. Bye bye.